What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the studio. I'm really excited to share our new challenge this week. And I was thinking about it, I wanted to do something a little different than what we traditionally think of for how we came up with our images. So most of the time when we come up with an image, we think of something that's been inspired or motivated by something that we've seen or looked at, right? So this week, I thought it would be cool if we used another one of our senses as the inspiration or the motivation for the actual images we make. So I thought it would be cool if we use our sense of sound. Now, one of my favorite things about art in general is that it can really challenge or change the way that we perceive or experience the world around us. And sound is one of those really powerful senses that can easily impact or change the way we're experiencing the world. All you have to do is think about listening to your favorite song on your headphones while you're walking down the street. And it's almost like life becomes a movie where you're the main actor in it. And I always thought that was really cool with music. So let's see if we can incorporate this into our art making this week. So when I first thought about using sound as the inspiration for our work, I had two main things that jumped out in my mind immediately. The first was the musician John Cage and his work called 433. And then also there was some YouTube videos that the science geek in me really loved, which was talking about resonant frequencies and the way that if you take a metal plate and you put sand on it and then you run a frequency through that plate, it's going to cause vibration on the surface of the plate, which will then make that sand create these really wild formations. So I wanted to take a look at these before we get into the ins and outs of what we're asking you to do for research on this assignment this week. So let's jump in and take a look at it. We're going to share my screen, and I have a couple of videos of John Cage that I want to start off with, and then we'll take a look at some of those sand videos where the vibrations are causing images to happen. So here's Mr. Cage, and John Cage was a performing artist in the 1950s. So the popular music at the time was like early rock and roll and things like that. And so what John Cage is doing here is really challenging or pushing the boundaries of like what could be considered music and how we experience sound in general, right? So can you experience these sounds in like a poetic or artistic way, or does it just sound like a jumbled mess of noises, right? So that's another thing that's important to note is that Mr. Cage here is using things that aren't traditionally thought of as musical instruments to create the sounds that are creating the song. So this piece is called Water Walk, and it's being performed on a talk show kind of to spotlight Mr. Cage's unique interpretation of sound and music. So let's check it out.
Water Walk because it contains water and because I walk during its performance.
That figures, doesn't it? Now also two things I want you to notice. Over here, Mr. Cage has a tape recording machine which will provide much of the, will you touch the machine so that we can know where it is, which will provide much of the background. Also, he works with a stopwatch. The reason that he does this is because these sounds are in no sense accidental in their sequence. They each must fall mathematically at a precise point. So he watches his watch as he works. He takes it seriously. I think it's interesting. If you are amused, you may laugh. If you like it, you may buy the recordings. John Cage and Water Walk.
So this goes on for 3 minutes and 58 seconds. I think you kind of get the idea here. So it definitely creates a certain kind of vibe or atmosphere listening to those sounds. I almost get like a scary movie vibe from it. But it's really interesting to me how he's using just everyday materials, and he's also timing them specifically to interact with one another in a certain type of way. Now, this isn't what made Mr. Cage really famous. This next video is a piece performed not by Mr. Cage himself, but by another musician. And this is the piece that really most folks know John Cage for. And this piece is called 433. I'm not going to say anything about it. Let's just jump in and see where Mr. Cage went with this musical composition. He comes out, takes a bow, closes the music. Sets a timer up. Closes the piano. And nothing. Still nothing. Now, certainly he's going to play something, right? Oh, wait, okay, here he goes. Here we go. Oh, he's opening the piano, looks at the keys. Wait, he closes the piano again. What? Okay, so this goes on for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, right? So this whole piece is the artist or the musician taking the stage, sitting there in silence for 4 minutes and 33 seconds and doing nothing. So the genius of what Mr. Cage is doing here is he's pointing out that silence isn't actually silent. And this is going to force the people in the audience or even you at home who are listening to this to really listen closely to what's happening. And just like where in the previous video where he's using everyday objects or almost everyday noises to get you to tune into reality in a different way, he's doing the same thing here with silence. So he's forcing you to listen to all what we would call the ambient or the less heard, less commonly like tuned into or listened to noises that are happening all around us. If you listen really closely, you might hear the hum of your refrigerator or the beep of your microwave or the cars driving past down the street, or maybe even the wind in the trees outside. So I think this is really cool and smart way of getting us to tune into what's going on around us in a unique or exciting or interesting way. Now, the other thing that I had wanted to share with you from my own personal experience was these cool YouTube videos where they're kind of showing you again that sound literally is vibrations. And so here we can see those vibrations are actually causing images to kind of just show up on this metal plate that has sand sprinkled on it. So let's take a look at what happens here. And what they're going to do, it starts with like, quote, really, and frequency of sound is being played through this plate. So here we have 1,820 hertz through this image, up to 2,041 hertz and through this totally different image. Now the science nerd in me just kind of loves this. It literally shows you that sound is vibration, energy moving, right? Which I think is just, and these designs keep getting more and more complicated, or there's more shapes that happen. I think up until a certain point, they kind of evolve back in construction. It's super cool, and like how organized the shapes are. I don't know. I always find it like that. So, one, we're taking a look at Mr. Cage, who's showing us that silence isn't actually silent. And two, we're seeing that sound is vibration, and that those vibrations could technically create like squiggles or lines or symbols or images, right? So, okay, thank you. So this week's research is called the sound map. And what I want you to do is we're going to be making 5 maps today. Each of these maps is going to take you 5 minutes to make. And we're going to ask that you do this on paper. So you're going to take a plain sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper, or whatever you have really. And I think it's a really great idea if you fold it in half and then fold it in half again. This will give you 4 boxes. So you can do 4 maps on the front and then one map on the back. You're gonna need a pencil, a pen, a marker, anything you can write or draw with, really. So the steps for this are, first, you're gonna find a place where you're sitting either outside or inside, away from other people. We want you to draw a circle on your piece of paper inside of your square or rectangle. You don't need to use a circle, but it might be cool to experiment with a circle on some of them. And this represents the area that you're sitting. You can also leave it just as the rectangle if you want, or if you want to do it in a square format, you can draw a square too. Draw a little X somewhere on that shape to represent where you're sitting. Then the next thing you're going to do is you're just going to sit for 5 whole minutes, and you're going to listen to your surroundings. As you hear things around you, I'd like you to record everything you hear on your circle using symbols or icons to represent each sound. Now remember, the science behind this is that sound waves are vibrations or energy that's traveling through a medium such as air, water, or a solid material. The further that wave goes away from its source, the weaker that the sound becomes. So you can keep that in mind when you're making your symbols. If you hear a quiet symbol, maybe the line or the shape is smaller or shorter and has less visual intensity as well. Here's a pro tip. Try using symbols and icons instead of an image of what the sound actually is. So draw the sound, not the thing making the sound. And to the right here, we have a great student example using really basic shapes and symbols there that I think are really wonderful to represent different sounds you might be hearing in your house or outside of your house. We have some step-by-step instructions here in the slideshow. This will also be in our Canvas, on our Canvas page, and it'll be written out on your Canvas page. But again, you're gonna find a place away from people. You're gonna draw a circle representing your area that you're sitting in. Mark an X to represent yourself, and then sit for 5 whole minutes, recording everything that you hear as best you can as a sound, symbol, or icon, not drawing the actual thing itself, but the sound you're hearing. When you're all done, take a 3-minute break. We're gonna do this for a total of 5 times in class today. So by the end of class today, you'll have 5 different sound maps, and we're gonna give you 40 minutes to do that. So I'll let you know once this video is done when we're gonna meet up in the chat feature at the end of the class. And at that point, we're going to be reviewing some of the discussion questions that I have in our next slide. Here's the discussion questions, just so you know ahead of time, so you can be thinking about your experience so you can come up with some answers for these. So number 1, how many sounds did you hear? How many of those sounds were natural? How many were made by humans or man-made? Did you recognize any of the sounds that you heard? Did you hear any bird calls that you know what kind of bird it was? Did some of the things you heard sound close while others sounded farther away? And how did it feel to sit and listen to your environment for 5 whole minutes? On Friday, we're going to be submitting our best 2 sound maps with your written responses to those discussion questions, as well as the self-reflection questions that are posted on our Canvas module. Again, these will be turned in on Friday for credit, and then you'll have 2 weeks after Friday to get them turned in before this module will disappear. So I'm really excited to see what you come up with today. I think you're gonna have an interesting experience without a doubt, and I can't wait to see what kind of symbols you create and to hear about your experience with this. So I'll see you in 40 minutes. Have fun. Peace in, peace out.